人間の寿命は短いって分かっていたのに、なんでもっと知ろうと思わなかったんだろう。
How intensely would you experience feelings if you lived for thousands of years? How detached would you be from your own emotions? How much effort would you put into understanding the human experience? And how much empathy would you be able to muster? These are just some of the questions that Frieren Beyond Journey's End explores beautifully as we follow the journey of Frieren, an elf magician who is suggested to have been living probably for thousands of years, after she concludes her decade-long adventure of defeating the Demon King and bringing an era of peace and prosperity to the world. I asked about Frieren to a friend who had read the story before the anime released, and he said it was a sort of magical take on Kino's journey. This instantly sold the series to me, as Kino is one of my favorite characters ever, seemingly apathetic and somewhat cold, but with an endless crave for exploration and knowledge of the world and of human nature, with a free-spirited yet logical way of approaching everyday life through her journeys. Frieren is very similar, but with the nuance of perceiving time very differently than humans. For Frieren, the epic 10-year quest she took with her trusty party felt like a week or a month of vacation in human years. And as she herself said, she used to be even more apathetic before interacting with her fellow partners, who gave Frieren a thirst to deepen her knowledge of magic even further for the first time, as well as a broader appreciation for the way humans perceive the weight of time and for the value each moment has for us, considering our finite nature. The perception of death is something that just isn't a problem in Frieren's psyche as an elf, and so she starts wishing to explore and understand the human experience more profoundly through her travels, while collecting magical spells as a hobby along the way. By facing the natural deaths of two of her traveling companions after some decades of well-earned peace, Frieren seems to have opened the floodgates of her feelings, or at least the intrinsic need to understand them better. Immediately after defeating the Demon King and celebrating the dawn of a peaceful era, she didn't think much of what she had built over time, but to her buddies, they had just gone through the most eventful and impactful decade of their lives, which is something that she has a hard time grasping completely. 10 years of journeying legitimately didn't mean much to her, so initially, she took that as just another drop in the ocean of her entire life. But as more and more years go by, Frieren realizes just how golden and precious that drop of water actually was, as she keeps looking back to those times as a sort of emotional compass to help her grasp human emotions and the value of memories better and better.
ところでフリーレン様、この旅って何か目的はあるんですか？
特にないよ。魔法収集の趣味の旅だからね。
Frieren regrets not having spent more time getting to know her companions and closely caring for them, and she did this because, well, she truly, yet somewhat naively, felt that even a couple decades weren't enough to get to know someone. You know, sorta like when we spend a weekend with someone we've never met before, and so we consciously know that we won't get to explore that person's personality and intricacies as deep as possible in such a short amount of time. Only Frieren didn't realize early enough that 10 years is more than enough to get to know a human quite well. So while her companions expressed appreciation for their friendship, for her presence, and for the time they spent together, she always brushed it off quite cold-heartedly, logically stating that, from her perspective, only 10 years had passed. For Frieren at that point in her life, the nature of human relationships were very difficult to grasp, and because the party knew that she meant no harm and was just emotionally blinded by her own nature, they never took these observations of hers personally. They truly knew her and appreciated the nuances of her personality and of the way she expressed herself. Eventually, Frieren gets to wholesomely give her all at getting to know her brand new magic apprentice Fern, and as they travel together, she learns that even the smallest gestures are enough to leave a lasting impact on another human. She is getting a second chance at sharing precious time with another being, but this time with a lot more empathy involved from her part. Of course, this in itself raises the question of how Frieren will be impacted by the inevitable death of her newfound partner as she increases her capacity to feel stronger emotions over time. How differently she'll be able to interpret her own feelings is definitely what intrigues me more as this story goes on. This anime takes its time feeding the viewer its details, which is exactly what this type of story needs. To take it easy and to properly savor the journey, just like the core themes of the narrative suggest. But this isn't so much only about the journey itself, as it is also about exploring the value of even the smallest of memories, relative to the lifespan of each being, that is. Also getting to deeply understand the tightly locked away feelings of Frieren, and getting to know her party better and better as she reminisces about their travels and does her best not to turn them into forgotten recollections. At her core, precisely because the 10 years they spent together felt like an ephemeral moment for her, she understands very well that in order to never forget them, she needs to keep recalling and polishing her memories as regularly as possible, which she does effortlessly, since, as much as she doesn't rationally understand this very well, she truly loved and cherished them and the journey they partook in together, as well as every moment they got to share. Focusing on an apparently heartless character with such a cold demeanor and who seems to lack any feelings whatsoever to most people is nothing but fascinating to me. As humans, we need proofs, constant proofs, to validate the emotions of others, like outward expressions or acts of empathy and care. So pulling the strings one at a time from such a wise, yet seemingly lethargic and hard to decipher character is one hell of a rewarding adventure to embark on. And I just love the way the portrayal of Frieren dances gracefully between wholesome and poignant, as it shows the beauty of both life and death, or the finitude and infinitude of the value of human connection itself. There are so many details in these first 4 episodes that I can only have confidence that we'll get to see more and more of this as the story goes on. Like, for example, how Frieren doesn't like her head to be patted, but then as she gets closer to Fern, she starts patting her head. We then learn that it was actually Frieren's master who patted her head a lot in the first place. So it's like she saw her master's head pats as something truly special to her, so she didn't want anyone else to do it to her. But later, with her own apprentice, she started doing that exact same act to show affection. There's also the fact that Frieren keeps downplaying her gradually more empathetic attitudes towards other people by saying stuff like, "Yeah, actually I'm just doing this for myself after all. It's not like I really care about that person anyways." Which is probably the most low-key tsundere act I've ever seen in anime. Things like this are subtle hints that point us towards the natural flourishing of Frieren's emotional side. Visually speaking, this is one of the most gorgeous fantasy anime I've ever seen. The way the directing intercalates the story with soothing, very well-framed montages to allow the viewer to chew its themes at a comfortable pace throughout the episodes makes this a truly unique fantasy experience in the medium, despite its very familiar world and concepts. Every single shot is beautifully and purposely crafted to the point where, after my occasional mind deviations, I made sure to go back and look at frames I hadn't fully appreciated. It's been a while since I've seen Madhouse go full throttle at a series with this much intention behind its production, probably since Sonny Boy. So I'm very happy to see them tackling such an amazing adaptation. These types of slow-burning stories with more of an introspective approach to their narrative clearly don't tend to appeal to the masses particularly, but it seems like the fantasy setting and the beautiful production of Frieren is already pushing it to the forefront of discussions, and that makes me very happy as well. Currently, with 113 manga chapters and counting, Frieren still has a lot to offer in the future with its anime. Getting to watch 4 episodes of this beauty right off the bat on its release was great to have a solid grasp of what this story is all about and what direction we can expect it to take. And I'll surely be there to witness the emotional journey and growth of Frieren. What about you? What are your thoughts on Frieren beyond Journey's End? Do you see it as something fascinating or interesting? Let me know. Stay awesome and see you next video. Bye bye!
エルフの感覚は分かりませんね。
まったくいつから生きているのやら。
50年も100年も彼女にとっては些細なものなのかもしれませんね。